everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Thabani. I'm Thabani Modise, and today I'm joined by a very, very, very good friend of mine, Thabani, and we're going to be talking about navigating sustainability in the mining industry. But before we get into that, I asked you if I should call you a professor or not.
Please don't. My name is Thabani. Thank you.
Can you just give us an overview of your background? I know you worked in corporates and consultancy and in academia and all of these exciting transitions in your growth. So give us that.
I think where I should start, obviously, is where I'm born. Big up to Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. That's where I'm from.
You know, our previous guest is Greek and from Harare.
Oh, wow.
So it's this interesting.
It is.
It's a good flow. Yeah. You guys are very intelligent also.
Thank you. I won't say no. But I grew up in Zimbabwe, Bulawayo, and then came to South Africa to do University of Rhodes, the University of Rhodes. Did a stint at UCT, and then did a master's in the US at the University of Oklahoma. So that's kind of like my educational background. I studied chemistry and environment. I always wanted to do something that was practical and tangible. So didn't want to be stuck in a lab or doing things that were too theoretical or academic. So that's really been where I focused. I've been very fortunate enough to work primarily in the mining industry and in extractives. So I started off at a company called Sasol. And even now I work sort of with mining companies and in consulting. I've had the fortune, really, I've been really privileged to be able to work, from the tip of Patagonia in Argentina, all the way up North America, all the way down this continent and in Asia Pacific, specifically in Australia and Indonesia. And I think that experience has been wonderful for me because it's exposed me to various contexts of what mining, extractives, people, community, climate change, that whole vast array of things that are happening, that mosaic that's happening, across our different continents. That's kind of how my career's transitioned.
And then when you got into you being a professor, why?
Oh God! So my first degree was actually an education degree. So teaching has always been kind of the grassroots of what I've always done.
Yeah.
I really love working with people. I really love seeing transitions from idea-wise to things that are being implemented sort of in people's lives. So I transitioned into professorial tenure within University of Cape Town. But I did that while I was still working at Anglo-American. And the idea there was to prepare young professionals for, to move from academia into the real life, into real sort of working environment, and to be a bridge with that regard.
You mentioned that because you worked in these different countries and really in the trenches of them, not just like what looks the glamorous side of it all.
Yes.
What did you notice in terms of sustainability within how they approach sustainability with these different countries, particularly continent-wise? So maybe Southern Africa or East Africa, that's how they approach sustainability within mining. And then in South America, that's how they approach it.
So I'd say the only difference is, we talk a lot about these different terms. We talk about ESG, we talk about...
Oh, we love ESG, don't we?
We do. But, we used to call it corporate social responsibility.
Right.
We talk about circular economy now. We used to call that industrial ecology. And with all these different buzzwords and all these things that are being said, catchphrases, etc., the bottom line, the grassroots is responsible resource usage for the benefit of communities and other stakeholders, right? And so I think the only differences that I'm finding going across our continents is the level of awareness and education that people have, and the agency, particularly around communities, the agency that communities have in terms of expressing their views pro or against mining. And so I think that's been cross-cutting. At the end of the day, people are people. And if you notice, I'm talking about the people side of things. Obviously, there's the environmental impact side of things.
Yeah.
And so, but a lot of that is interfaced with people. So when I first joined Anglo Gold Ashanti, part of the reason why I came as an environmental professional was that most of the issues that we're having with the community, and I joined the community team, had that interface with communities. So it was environmental issues that affected communities. And then you've got disgruntled or communities that are not happy with you. And yeah, so that's what I think is sort of cross.
Yeah. And I think my concern, because my fascination with mining has just always been within the beneficiation side of things.
Yes.
But my question has always been, with these buzzwords that we have, corporate responsibility, that transitions to ESG, and prior to that it was this and that, is if the terminology or the definitions get lost in translation. And I appreciate how you said the bottom line is the responsibility. But then my question now is, why is it like, to this day, we still have a conversation of the community versus the mine itself, or the organization or the corporate that's supporting the mine itself. So what is this clash or this mismatch that we're having to this day?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think it boils down to power dynamics.
Yeah.
So where you have empowered communities, they're able to sort of voice their concerns, etc. But I think we have different organizations, especially mining companies, that go into a country. Their focus is on resource exploitation, and they want to do that as quickly, as efficiently, as trouble-free as they possibly can. And so there's some concessions that are made in terms of the law and the regulatory frameworks that they operate in. So if they're told they have to do this, they do that. If they're told they have to do this, they do that. I've been very fortunate that I've worked largely for companies that didn't really fit into the sort of the normal standard deviation, right? They were more towards the responsible side.
Right.
And so they understood as companies the role that they have in community and society and within environmental boundaries to do the right thing. So value creation for these companies wasn't just framed in sort of financial terms. And I think that's not, that's not normal in mining society. So that's why you're getting the mismatch. People are coming in to exploit and leave, and communities are then stuck with devastation, environmental devastation. Their socioeconomic benefits haven't been realized, and it just becomes a mess. So I think I think there is sort of a bigger transition to more responsible mining and doing the right thing. But I think you still have that mismatch in terms of power dynamics.
Do you think to this day, like 2024, in Angola somewhere, there's a community that's being exploited? Like, is that still the case? Because I'm really struggling, right? Because it seems as though, and I know that sometimes what we see in terms of media, it's all controlled, but the reality might be something different.
Yeah. So I lived in the DRC most of 2022.
Right.
And, had the privilege of, crisscrossing that great country. And you see some of these things.
Sure.
Not everyone plays by sort of the rule books. We've got different actors, different players from different regions.
Yeah.
So that have different approaches to how you look at things. So exploitation is absolutely still happening.
This is hard for me to hear. It's really hard for me to hear because
unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah, the reality of it is it's so concerning. And so, governance. What role does governance play now?
Yeah. So I think, look, governance is important from a number of perspectives. So with regards to transparency of mining activities, transparency of financial flows within a country, it's important, but governance is only as effective as the frameworks in which you operate in. So if your business model and your organizational philosophy doesn't include the desire to to work within a governance framework and there's no benefits for you in doing so, you know, a lot of companies are going to try and get as much resources as they possibly can for their shareholders,
Right.
rather
Right.
than to do the right thing. If they can be
Right.
in and out and gone, some companies will do that. Look, and I must say, that's probably sort of the rogue, a lot of rogue organizations that maybe fly under the radar. And as I'm saying, like I think there is a trend towards more governance, more transparency. If I think about the car manufacturing business, the automotive business, and you look at some ventures like Drive Sustainability, there's a number of ethical value chain standards that are there. And a lot of that is driven by the end consumer saying, I don't want to buy anything that has any form of conflict that's related to it.
Right.
So you're getting pressures there. Then you're getting pressures from civil society, and civil society is so important in
Yeah.
this to highlight some of the things that are happening and to show a way forward as to what it could look like. And then obviously there's the role of government in terms of enforcing and bringing in the governance functions, the regulatory compliance elements. And then obviously as business also has a role. So I think we all have these roles. I think we are tending towards the right direction, but we certainly are not out of the woods,
Right. In your personal opinion,
in my personal opinion. Yes.
do you think that, how do I phrase this without being cancelled? Do you think that this is the reason why African countries are easily exploited by Western or European countries, especially when it comes to mining within Africa? Because you have your Zimbabwe, they have the gold, they have lithium, all these, you have Botswana, you have all these different countries, and we have all these resources, all these minerals. But when you see us benefiting from it, it doesn't, the ratio doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So what is that thing that's making it seem as though someone from the Western world will see, okay, cool, I'm not really happy with, I would love to cash in on this particular mineral and take it back to my country and then sell it back to you at a higher price?
Yeah. I mean, so I think one of the most groundbreaking pieces of policy that we've created within the African context is the African Mining Vision
Right.
from 2009, and there's a number of organizations. The African Minerals Development Center that's based in the AU is the custodian of really driving that African mining vision within the member states of the AU. So I think if you look at that document, I think it's written in 2009, but yet it echoes some of the things that we're seeing now with regards to resource development. And of course, now we are talking about critical minerals, we're talking about low carbon economy, we're talking about all these buzzwords again
Right.
that are almost they're refueling that almost a gold rush. It's a neo gold rush, right? So it's like there's this rush for minerals in Africa because of all the things that need to happen. And so we have an opportunity now based on the African mining vision to do things a little bit differently. But you're absolutely right. I think without a vision, the Bible says, without a vision, my people perish. And I think as with that vision, the African mining vision, I think it started to get us thinking as Africans around not just developing our own minerals for our people, selling them, getting money, getting revenue, and it's got us thinking about value addition. It's got us thinking about how do we leverage what's happening for the sustainable development of our people. And I think that wasn't there before, and that's why some of this madness was happening. I sit on a technical committee looking at mining model law. So basically, what it says is that we're developing at the AU a model law for mining that any country on the continent can look at this model law and use it as a basis of either checking what they currently have and making sure it's aligned.
Yeah.
If you're a mature jurisdiction, if you're an immature jurisdiction and you're moving into sort of the mining, you can take that model law and use that as a way of kind of growing your industry. But what it does is it sets a no regrets bottom line harmonized approach for what happens to mining in Africa. Because we don't want the guys going to the DRC and say, hey, can we come and get your minerals? We'll do this and this and this. And then DRC said, no, according to our model law, you can't do that. And then they go across the road to Zambia, and Zambia says, okay, cool, guys can come and do this here. This is what's been happening. We've been, as African nations, we've been played against each other. And so, yeah. So, I mean, there's a view around that and an approach around that harmonization. And I think it's important to
yeah. Speaking of the AU, you were there recently.
Yes.
Could you just give us a highlight of what was being discussed there? Whisper.
Yes.
Let us know.
Yes.
Give us insights.
It was fascinating. So it was the African Industrialization Week.
Yeah.
And the focus was really around AI and technology development. So just really fascinating. I met the most incredible young people, innovators, entrepreneurs, coders. I mean, it was incredible. I got to speak about the African commodities strategy. And African commodity strategy is part of a group of, I think it's 15 key projects within the AU focusing on development. So the commodity strategy is any commodity. So it includes agriculture, includes mining, minerals, oil and gas, etc.
Right.
And it looks at how we can what strategy we can take as an African continent to avoid us being on the backside of commodity spikes and price manipulation. Yeah. And just development of our commodities so that we diversify our commodities. We use technology to create jobs, to improve our resource utilization. So I spoke about that and sort of the role of mining companies in that, and the role of academia in making sure that this goes forward.
I've always been fascinated by the world of AI, especially when it comes to mining.
Yes.
And how it helps in terms of accountability, checks and balances, sustainability, I guess, in this sense, and and how even with the Kimberley process, how blockchain could potentially help in terms of being able to identify the source, if this is a blood diamond or not, etc. And do you think in any way was it ever discussed how blockchain methodologies could potentially aid in sustainability within mining?
Yeah, so that traceability story is so key.
Right.
I think it benefits the end user to know that obviously there's this accountability and transparency, but also with regards to the communities that are sort of frontline communities.
Yes.
It almost forces, or it's another layer to make sure that the companies that they're dealing with are actually dealing with them in a transparent way.
Right.
So that whole value chain is important in terms of that. I think what excited me the most about what's going on, tech-wise, AI-wise, etc., and to an extent you can see where it will be applied to mining, is around the use of AI even in sort of greenfields exploration.
Oh.
So I mean, so remember with AI, it's all data driven, right?
Right.
So let's say I understand the geology of my country. I understand where I've got the geological data that's built in. I've got good maps. I understand sort of the ecosystems, etc. I also know technically where the data before would indicate that there was a deposit, a gold deposit or a diamond deposit. So we check that into AI. You get it to identify, with a high level of possibility where there could be these deposits.
Yeah.
And then instead of sending these poor geologists to go
to explore something where there's nothing,
they don't know it's there.
Right.
It's more targeted.
Right.
So there's a company, it's a US company, I think it's called Cobalt, something like that. They've just discovered a massive deposit in Zambia, just on the basis of AI, just on the basis of data. And so I think that helps us in terms of then being more efficient and being less intrusive in how we do our exploration. But then also, we know that when we're doing the resource development as well, if we understand those geological models and we use we use AI as well, we could probably find a more efficient way of resource extraction than before. So I think there's a lot of exciting things. And then just one other thing that I'll mention, I met a young man, his name is Nathan, and he owns the biggest drone manufacturing company in Africa. He's 21 years old. He's had this company for 11 months. It is growing out of control. It's just exploding, what he's been able to do. But I look at that, and he's talking about, obviously he does aerial drones. He does what are called ground drones. I don't know. It's like,
That's interesting.
and then he's looking at sea drones. So from an exploration perspective, what could that mean? That could mean, getting all this data around
No
the
need for
geology.
millionaires to go on a submarine.
Yes, of course. There we go. There we go. There we go. So there's a lot of this overlay of things that can happen, which makes the future of mining quite exciting.
It is. I appreciate how you use the word intrusion.
Yes.
Which what I think is, especially when it comes, you can't talk about sustainability without talking about climate change. And I do recall there was a strong resistance towards oil extraction at some point. And I think it speaks towards, how that impacts the environment and how, oil and gas, you should avoid using that. And, the US governments were involved and it was just a whole mess and all of that. But how do you think, in terms of extraction and exploration, our approach should be here on out, especially with the aid of AI and how, especially with the corporates that have government backing and the financial muscle to be able to do so, because we can't, right now, our climate is regressing. Our world our Earth is technically, it is ending. And it may not be now, it may not be in the next 100 years, but the fact that we're looking in a span of centuries now, it's very concerning.
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely. I think, and again, I always go back to this term. For me, it is about responsible resource usage. And so when we are looking at climate change, it is around responsible development. And so I think there's an opportunity there. I mean, we have to transition away from oil and gas. We have to transition away from coal. I mean, we have to.
I don't know if the pro-coal and pro-oilers are going to be happy about that, but I hear you.
But we have to be pragmatists around that, right?
Yeah.
So a Trump America is going to be very different from a Biden America in terms of their policies around resource use. I think we do need to shift away from this addiction that we have from fossil fuels. The reality is that we have to do it from a practical perspective, because it's a limited resource.
Sure.
And so I'm talking about transitioning. I'm not giving timeframes. I'm just saying, we need to be doing it. And I mean, even now in other industries, they're looking for synthetic derivatives of some of these things so that they can see how to transition. But yes, so I think there's opportunities in the future for us to be more to be more responsible and less disruptive in how we approach mining and oil and gas and resource extraction. And I think we need to be focusing on that. We need to be focusing on recycling. We need to be focusing on efficiencies in terms of this low carbon economy. And I'll say this as well. I think it's also important for us in the holistic view of low carbon economy transition. First of all, to be pragmatic around what that looks like. For the African perspective, where our percentage of emission contribution versus our need for development, we need to be pragmatists around how we do that. And as an African continent, we need to be clear as to what our development imperatives are in a responsible way and drive that. But I also think we need to be looking at things from a life cycle approach. So I'll give you an example. We talk about renewable energy. So we've got these lovely turbines that, wind energy, it's great. What happens to those turbines when the end of life comes for that?
Sure.
How much energy did it take to create those things? How much fuel does it take to transport one of? So we need to be looking holistically and making sure that from a holistic life cycle approach, we are also transitioning to a really low impact carbon wise world.
I mean, I can imagine it may be difficult for leaders of state to kind of, especially those that are heavily reliant on mining as in terms of their economy, to kind of balance the access to markets and having the minerals themselves. And the fine line between kind of selling your country and selling your soul.
Yeah.
And how do they kind of balance that out? Because you can't approach mining without being sustainable, because if you're not sustainable, there will be nothing left for your great kids coming after. So how do you propose they approach that?
So I think some of these documents that I've mentioned, the African Mining Vision, this commodity strategy, I think what it does is that it looks at African minerals as an endowment for its development. So it's for the development of the people, it's for the development of the country. But we know there's an entire ecosystem that operates in. We know there's a whole geopolitical framing of all of this. And I think what's important for any country is to understand that and to make sure that you have a strategy around doing that. On this continent, we have instruments like the African, I always get this wrong, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, led by, and I'll name drop here, one of my university friends, Wamgele, the Honorable Wamgele. So I mean, he's done such an amazing job in changing the frameworks and starting to drive that change. And I think it's understanding sort of the regional economic communities, understanding what development looks like for us as a continent and prioritizing that, but also developing those markets, those global value chains that our people can get out. We extract our minerals, we develop them here. We have our own value chains within our countries, within our regions, within the continent, but also globally, right? So using those things, but having that in mind and driving that for generations to come, instead of just being focused on your tenure of governance. So.
I think what AFTA has managed to do, apart from just its impact and bringing Africans together and enabling us or empowering us to trade within ourselves, is just to show us the power we have without being so reliant on external parties. And I think that's so exciting, especially when it comes to mining. But yet I can't help but worry about the third world countries that really, just from a government level, it's just very shaky. I think it's 2024, we've seen a lot of emergence in terms of the youth's voices, in terms of voting. But also we've seen a lot of unfairness as well. And just seeing the impact of voters and how we vote impacts the mining industry as well. So and it's just scary as well to just kind of think that, someone in just Harare, like we're talking about, or Bulawayo or Kwekwe or something. I know that makes sense, by the way. Who may not think that they're impacted, but they are impacted. And the very fact that they're not aware of some things, it's going to be happening to them, and they may not be contributors and may not feel like they have a voice. So why do you think it's so important for the average person to know what's happening in terms of the mining industry, to know why energy transition is important?
Yeah, I mean, it's for all those reasons. And I think from a youth perspective, I think there's an element where our youth need to be empowered.
What does empowered mean in this context?
They need to be given agency, a voice, and an ability to action.
Yes.
their beliefs, their ideas, their
Yes.
values.
Yeah.
They need to be given that space, because if we don't, I feel like if we don't give that to the youth, at some stage, the youth are going to take it. And that might not be a bad thing, but we want to understand in terms of just from a growth perspective, how to capacitate and unleash these brilliant minds onto society, because that's where disruption, that's where innovation is going to happen.
Right.
And we hold ourselves back by holding the youth back. And so I think the youth are starting to ask the right questions. And I think as people in academia, for example, one of the roles I think of academia is to be probing the youth. And when I talk about academia, I talk about the formal education and informal education, or formal academia and informal academia. It's the probing. It's asking the questions that maybe, the youth don't want to ask, and getting people to be thinking, right? And that's part of their education. And that's what I think is going to lead to people like starting to seek out for themselves. Like, well, my iPhone is dope, but man, like, what's in this thing?
Yeah. This battery.
This battery is dope, but man, what's in this thing? Like, how
Yeah.
does it take to get here?
Right.
I think our societies have developed into, what was nice about rural societies is that you could trace everything that was coming to you. So you could trace where your milk came from. You could trace where, the meat came from. There's this disconnect that's happened.
Yeah.
So now we're not thinking about that. But I think we need to go back there. And I think in a way we are going back there, asking those questions.
Right. Yeah. And I know that there's a really cool program that you lead that I really wanted to be part of.
Yes.
And I think this is such a great platform to make sure that people know about it. Yeah. The more people know about it, the more they know, the more, people can apply their minds to it. Because I know you've partnered with Mining Indaba and all this in UCT. It's all very exciting. And it's just such an empowering program. But yes, please do tell us about it.
Awesome. So I lead I assist in leading a program called the Leadership for Extractives and African Development. It's based out of the University of Cape Town.
Yeah.
We've partnered with Investing in African Mining Indaba. We bring together the top minds, African minds, in mining across the sector, from civil society to industry to government to academia. We bring, it's normally a cohort of about 20. We bring these young minds together for an intensive deep dive into mining, into life, into leadership. We unleash them in a restricted way at Mining Indaba.
Unleash in a restricted way.
To interact, we facilitate interaction with government officials, with other mining executives, etc. And then we unleash them to the world. But we have them within a lead alumni, and I lead that alumni program that then focuses some of the things that they've learned into practical application for their work, their families sometimes. We provide a sort of a model of mentoring, and then we've got this very big alumni body. One of the sort of the faces of our alumni, probably the most distinguished, is a lady called Marit Kitao, who's the interim director of the African Minerals Development Center, who is the face of the African Mining Vision. So our lead alumni,
I love it's a woman.
And she is incredible,
Yeah.
Strong woman. We try and make sure that we get our gender balanced correctly. This year, this cohort that's coming in, I'm proud to say, it's 50-50.
Wow.
And that wasn't a forced ranking. It was, merit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's very exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing the impact beyond Mining Indaba and sort of some of the things that we're doing. Seeing a lot of collaboration organically. People get along, and people in different cohort groups getting along and doing great things. So yeah, it's exciting.
It's exciting also for me just watching it and just learning about it because it shows that we are somewhat all one-minded and building this brilliantly powerful network of Africans coming together to change and create impact within the mining industry. I think is absolutely incredible. And then my closing question for you, Thabani, is your vision, or what vision do you think we could potentially have when it comes to mining sustainability within the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think I'm starting like a broken record. Responsible resource use.
You can't say it enough, eh?
And it's just got to be that.
Yeah.
And but disrupting now and looking at the technology that we have to fast track that. I think we have to continue to empower communities. That community voice is so critical. You know, our vision of, or my vision of sustainable value creation means that at the center of development is community. And so these are not people that, you know, we give stuff to. These are our partners in development. What does that look like? What does an empowered community look like that is assisting us in resource development, responsible resource development? So that's the future that I would like to see. Use of tech, more people-centered approach to development, and mining companies. Well, the laggards, because there are some really good ones. The laggards coming through to a particular point where we know that this is the right thing to do, and this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this, Thabani. And then tell me, what's your future looking like?
My future?
Yeah, I know your consultancy is doing really well. So excited. I'd just like you to name drop and just tell us what the future looks like for this incredible business of yours.
So I run Moahi Sustainable Solutions. We are a boutique sustainability company. We partner with our clients in walking the journey in sustainability from maturity to wherever you want it, from grassroots to wherever you want to be.
Yeah,
it's exciting. We're expanding. We're looking at various joint ventures with a number of potential partners, and really we just want to, this coming year, focus again on some of these pertinent issues, to be a voice with our clients in shaping their sustainability imperatives and actually just implementing and getting things done. So it's exciting, and I think there'll be more that Moahi does and I do, even within the university perspective, in shaping mining law and on the continent, so working more with the AU, and starting to take some of the concepts and pilot studies that we've done and scaling and having an impact there, and looking at at innovations and how innovations are going to help us as well in meeting our clients' needs.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and we'll be looking forward to that. Thank you for sponsoring this episode, by the way.
Thank you for having me.
It's been incredible. Yeah. And thank you all for watching and listening. I'm looking forward to hearing your commentary on this very critical topic of sustainability in mining. See you next time.